It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. There's something happening tomorrow, a little something. We've been working a long time to get to Election Day 2024. That is tomorrow. Hope you've got a plan. Hope you're registered. Hope you're in one of those states you had to register a while ago. Hope you did it. Hope you got a plan. Hope you got a ride. I hope you get there, because this is kind of big one. Kind of a big one. A lot of money been spent on this. In fact, my son said to me, "Can this end, please?" He goes, "I knew who I was voting for months ago. I didn't need all of this." And he laid out all of the flyers and all the door hangers, because this is his first election. So there's a lot of everybody inundating him and new voters. So it's like chum in the water. He has been inundated with stuff to get him to go move in one direction or the other. And he's like, "I knew who I was voting for. I didn't need all of this. I'm ready to cast my ballot, ready to move forward." And I think that's a lot of the country. And it's one of those things where you go, yeah, these elections have gotten really way too long. This one's been really exciting because, the last couple of months, new candidate, new blood, new energy. It's been very interesting. Now, this is where, when this election was first imagined, as I was planning for this, my mind was, this is going to be two old guys. It's going to be Joe Biden, going to be Donald Trump, and they were going to do what they do. The blood, the energy, the passion, the vibes, if you will, that Kamala Harris has brought to this. And I saw the opening on Saturday Night Live, Saturday from the hospital, and it was fun. And my mind went into this place of, do you remember when politics and politicians, were people you looked up to? Do you remember when, you wanted your kids to emulate them, to be good people, to have a sense of humor, but still care about their community? Do you remember when things weren't so ugly? So you get to see this opening, and you see Kamala Harris, who is very comfortable in her skin, very, whether you like her laugh or not, somebody who loves to laugh. My mind kept coming to this place of, I want to live in that world. The anger, the vitriol, the hatred that comes from the political right, that comes from Donald Trump. I want that to stop. Do I want 4 years of that? Now, as all of you know, I've been going through some personal issues. My wife was involved in an accident back in September. We have been spending all of our time with her at the hospital, helping her get through every part of this. Me, my daughter, and our children. And we're now doing physical therapy, and we were in a physical therapy room, a large room, and I happened to overhear a conversation in the next workbench where a guy's, going on and on about, how he's voted for Trump and how, all of this stuff. And he goes to the woman like he wanted her approval. Things were better 4 years ago. And he kept going on this, kept hammering on this. And the woman finally said, I'm a nurse. 4 years ago, things were really bad. And he stopped because no one probably had told him that 4 years ago, things were really bad. But this nurse, in a very nice way said, look, things were not great 4 years ago for me. We were worried about a collapsing healthcare system. And as I was thinking of things that I would have said had I been her, I would have said, tell me which trucking company that brought the refrigerated morgue to the hospital did you find most pleasing? What toilet paper that you didn't get because the shelves were empty. What about that made you happy? Because I know we like to forget. There's this kind of political amnesia, especially when it's being repeated over and over and over and over again. The mastery of Trump and the right is that they've got such a big megaphone. They've got such media saturation that they can lie without worrying that someone's going to fact check them. They hate being fact checked. Remember that. But they know that they can just make things up, rewrite history, and that there will be a large enough megaphone out there to constantly put that in people's ear. How does someone go, I was better off 4 years ago. The country was better off 4 years ago. Yeah, shut down. Unemployment through the roof. But again, it's what's been repeated to them. Now, me, as I said, I watched the Saturday Night Live skit, and I couldn't help but go, I'd like 4 years of that kind of a vibe, as opposed to the 4 years of what we already know will happen, which will be, the kind of vitriol, the anger, the division, the kind of thing that Trump does, the kind of thing that he thrives on. I want someone who's going to at least try to unite the country. And I think Kamala Harris is that person. I think truly she wants to be the person who brings this country together and does great things and helps families like her very own. This is the thing that I like about the Harris-Walz ticket. And I've talked about, what Walz has done as going from being a school teacher to eventually being a governor, and how using that power that he's got to make the lives of people that he knew as a teacher, make those lives better. That's what government should be about. That's what wanting to run for office should be about making lives better. All I keep hearing from Trump is, well, we're going to make the other side angry. We're going to tick them off. Now, I'm sure that, and I'm going to get emails from this, and I hope I do, angry ones always to the top, that someone's going to say, no, Rick, Donald Trump is going to unite the country. And I come back to how. We've seen the plan. Project 2025 is very clear. One of the most divisive documents ever created. Will destroy what's left of the middle class. What will destroy what is left of a prosperous working class. They're very clear on their want for that. Elon Musk has been very clear of the idea of, it's going to be really hard because there's going to be some pain, but we're going to recreate the economy, or it's going to be really great. And as we talked about last week, Trump and his fascination with the 80s and 90s, and not the 1980s and 90s. This idea that we're gonna do these crazy things, like we're gonna do away with income tax and tax on overtime and tax on Social Security. No one's ever gonna pay taxes. We're just gonna tariff you to death. And look, as someone who's not opposed to tariffs, when used strategically, this puts me in a weird spot, because what he's talking about is just plain crazy. But I want to hear your thoughts. Are you ready for the insanity to stop? You're ready for the break? Like my son, who just said, I just want to go to the mailbox without this. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Well, the last day of get out and vote, the last day of messaging, the last day of knocking on doors until we start casting the ballots. Tomorrow it's going to be all about getting people actually to the polls. Today it's still about motivating, and here to share some thoughts on what his union's doing and what we're seeing not just across the country but here in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. I've asked Jimmy Williams Jr. to come talk with us. Jimmy's the general president of IUPAT, the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. Jimmy, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, great to be with you here today, Rick.
So as we're wrapping up this push towards Tuesday, what are you seeing?
Hey, I think we all know it's going to be super close, and I think we've seen that in the polling numbers and just in the way the ups and downs of this election seem to be. Everything changed when you start with Donald Trump and an assassination attempt, Joe Biden stepping out, Kamala Harris coming in. And just the ups and downs of what's going on. It's going to be super close. It's a turnout election. It's who can turn out the most voters tomorrow on Election Day.
Yeah, now the message, clearly for union members, the message should be a no-brainer. There should not, in my humble opinion, be a person with a union card in their wallet voting for Donald Trump, given his 4 years, and then given the 4 years that we've just experienced under Joe Biden. Is that the message you're out there purveying?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to call for what it is, and that's exactly what we've been doing. And you and I have spoken for years now, Rick, about how over the course of time it's been difficult to convey that message. But this one's very simple, and when you really put the two candidates up against one another, as a union leader and as union members, it's pretty simple. If you're going to vote your union, then the choice is simple. The choice is clear. You have Kamala Harris talk about supporting the PRO Act. You're never going to hear Donald Trump say that. You have Kamala Harris talking about expanding what Joe Biden has built and going further. And you're not going to hear Donald Trump talk about that. Donald Trump has talked about nothing but grievances, nonsense. And, quite frankly, what we're telling our members is it's time to turn the page. It's time to heal. It's time to move forward.
No, absolutely. And, just over the weekend, I was having a conversation with a couple of my Teamster buddies who were saying, look, our union is organizing like never before. There are all these organizing victories, and it's across the movement. A lot of victories are happening. And I said, well, you can blame that on the CMEX decision. The fact that we've got a general counsel at the National Labor Relations Board, and you've got people on the board who are going to use the laws in place to help workers, as is the mission to organize and to fight for better wages, hours, conditions. I said, look, Trump's put into office. That CMEX decision gets overturned immediately. I believe these organizing victories that we're seeing now, I believe they stop.
Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000%. We're going to have to shift up to a more defensive, position and posture when it comes to organizing. And nobody wants to be in that position. But you got more than that as a building trades leader. I mean, he's going to repeal project labor agreements. Day one, he's done it. He did it 2016. Every Republican that has come into office, in the last 25, 30 years is made an executive order outlawing project labor agreements on federally funded work. I mean, you got over $2.5–3 trillion worth of government construction spending into the future that's still yet to be spent. And that's on the line for our members. But absolutely, I mean, you're going to have a Secretary of Labor who's bought and controlled by the billionaire class, from day one. You're going to have NLRB appointments, and you're going to have a, corporate attorney sitting as the general counsel of the NLRB. And that puts us on defense right off the get.
Yeah, is it possible? Because, I'm in this weird position of, as a Teamster member, being at odds with our general president and people thinking he's going to be the Secretary of Labor in the event that Trump wins. I think Elon Musk could be that guy.
Yeah, listen, I could never see and don't ever see a day where Donald Trump would put a general president of a
That's what's
labor
been thrown
union
thrown at me.
as Secretary of
And I'm
Labor.
with you. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been wrong before in life, but man, that one would shock the hell out of me, Rick, and I wouldn't fall for those types of rumors ever in my lifetime because, look, he showed who he liked. He already had 4 years in office, and he chose Judge Alito's son. He chose the Godfather pizza goofball. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here with Donald Trump.
No, I didn't want you to mention anything about Sean O'Brien. It was the Elon Musk part that scares me. That's the part. That's the part that would scare me.
Wouldn't shock me one bit. He farmed out his entire get out the vote effort in the state of Pennsylvania to billionaire Elon Musk. I mean, this is who he surrounds himself with.
So when you look at that, and I go back to the old Jay Gould quote, I could pay half the working class to murder the other half. I look at someone like Elon Musk as the embodiment of a billionaire who would think in that fashion, and having him in some kind of position of power in our government, it should frighten all of us. I mean, it takes me back to something my grandfather always said. He said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they understand return on investment. And all of this money that Musk and all of this time and energy that Musk is putting into this, he knows he wants something, and it's not. I don't think it's good for us.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's good for us. I don't think it's good for America. The billionaire class looks out for the billionaire class. And let's be honest here. I mean, Elon Musk never worked a day in his life like we have. And that is the last person we want setting economic policy on behalf of working class people.
No, I'm right there with you. So as you're out and you're talking to people, and you've been doing this for a little over a month now, right? At job sites across the country. I've been following you guys on social media. You and the van are just about everywhere. Are these things that you're talking about? Are your members getting this? Does there seem to be a light bulb, like an epiphany moment that you get?
Yeah, you know what, Rick? The one thing that for certain is different this time around is 2020. We were dealing with the pandemic, and having longer conversations with our members wasn't easy. Trying to reach them virtually, trying to reach them, digitally was difficult. And spending the time on job sites, being able to talk to our members, you are able to have a much longer conversation. And that's what's needed when there's nothing but 30-second sound bites out there about inflation, immigration. Those are the things that Donald Trump has masterfully used to divide the working class. And, you do need more time to talk to your members. And we've been having nothing but positive dialogue with our members. And obviously, look, not everybody is able to be flipped. However, when given the opportunity to really explain the issues going into this election, you can certainly see the shift, and you can see the momentum shifting once you have that opportunity.
Because look, I believe it's going to be the union members who are going to drive this election, because economically, I think they're the ones who are the ones who do shift a little bit back and forth and make some of the swing votes. So for me, this moment is important to get them on board, especially when you look at the information that is out there. This Project 2025, this is scary stuff. Now, me sitting in this chair, none of the stuff that's in that document is surprising. This is stuff that every one of these right-wing think tanks have been dreaming about for years. It's what they've been whispering to each other. They finally found someone who's dumb enough to put it down on paper and say that's their blueprint. And look, I think Tim Walz is right. You don't make up a playbook if you're not going to use it. I fear what's in there. If Trump gets a chance, that becomes our future.
There's no doubt. There is no doubt. When somebody tells you who they are, you got to believe them, right? And then more to the point, they've been trying these different things now for the course of the last 50 years. This was an entire package and playbook of things that they have tried intermittently now over the course of our lifetimes. And that doesn't mean, that they're going to stop just because, Donald Trump says he didn't support Project 2025. I mean, look around him. Everybody he has surrounded himself with believes wholeheartedly in that agenda. And there is no doubt that is going to be the playbook for the federal government going forward.
Yeah. Now you said something earlier about project labor agreements, and we talk quite often on the program about prevailing wage and things that are specific to the building trades that most voters don't know anything about, that most people don't really care about or think it affects them or benefits them in any way. I argue that it does benefit them. Project labor agreements, I think, are a good way to spend tax dollars to ensure that the projects that we do are done in a more efficient way. With good wages for everyone. Walk me through why you think both of those things are good for, someone who's never going to benefit from it. Why, the cashier at the local supermarket or the shopkeep on Main Street. Why do those two things matter to anyone besides your members?
Well, it should matter to all because, look, first off, the statistics have shown that a federal government or a state and local government that invests in prevailing wages and project labor agreements, there is zero difference in whether or not, the job is performed on time and under budget. So there you can start right off the bat. You're going to get the best, most highly qualified, skilled workforce in the world when it comes to construction. But put that aside, the economic comeback and what comes back to communities under project labor agreements and in jobs that are paying local area standard Davis-Bacon rates, it's tenfold. When workers have more to spend at their local grocery store, when workers have more to spend at the local, economy, the restaurants, the retail stores, everybody does better. It's truly a high road economic model that, quite frankly, lifts up all communities. And that's what you should want as a taxpayer. Look, we all got to pay our taxes. Don't you want your taxes to come back to you in the form of having consumers that can spend more, having consumers that have more disposable income? That just makes sense. On top of it, knowing that the most highly productive, skilled workforce is going to be working on those projects.
Yeah, and local. One of the things I said, on Friday was that, I want a local building trades. I want the guy who's putting the roof on my kid's school to have a kid in that school too, and be in my neighborhood so that he's going to do a darn good job to make sure it doesn't fall in, as opposed to some transient who's going to come through, some fly-by-night who's going to do a half you-know-what job and never be seen again. I just think it's smart policy. I think it's a sound investment. I think it's good for not just the workers, but as you pointed out, the communities as well.
Yeah, it's a proven process that has worked now for a long time. And there's the only people that are against project labor agreements are the folks that work in the construction industry that don't want to pay the higher wages and higher benefits. Let's just be honest.
Our ABC contractors.
ABC contractors, the Chamber of Commerce, the folks that, want to do the best that they can to profit off of the backs of the working people in this country. They're the only ones against project labor agreements.
Yeah, I look at the Tale of Two Bridges. It's always my favorite example. You got that bridge out in California that's probably never going to ever be done, or the replacement to the Tappan Zee. One was done with a project labor agreement with prevailing wage, done on time, under budget, and the other one, well, not.
Yep. Still waiting, right? That's the reality of how and how important it is to have a federal government that understands that too.
Yeah, it's not always the cheapest price wins. It's the best price and the best workers. So let me ask you, you're wrapping up your final day in your neck of the woods in Philly. As everyone knows, Pennsylvania is going to be the decider, I think, in this election. And Philadelphia is going to be a big part of this. What do you experience? I know on Sunday you were at a rally with Bob Casey. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff there. What's the atmosphere?
Look, like you said, everything is pointing to Pennsylvania being the deciding state in this election. There's no pathway for Vice President Harris to the presidency if she loses Pennsylvania. It's going to be very, very difficult, put it that way. And then, most people know that in the state of Pennsylvania, if you don't win Philadelphia and the surrounding counties by a huge majority, you're going to struggle winning statewide. And what I am so impressed with and what I am proud to be a part of is that I've seen the most, what I believe to be best ground game developed by the labor movement direct to our members. We had hit canvas after canvas after canvas. I believe I think it was almost 1.5 million doors hit between the labor movement, Kamala Harris for president, and the Democratic Party just on Saturday alone in the state of Pennsylvania. Everywhere I go, people are out canvassing. People are knocking doors, talking to their neighbors, talking to their coworkers. And I think that's going to be the difference to win this election that is going to be close, And I personally am going to stay through Election Day tomorrow, make sure I stay in Pennsylvania so that, I get to cast my ballot here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania for the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris.
Well, it sounds like you got a plan, but let's make sure you get to it. But obviously tomorrow the big push is going to be just getting people to the polls and making sure that they get to cast their ballots. Any advice for people who, if they go to the polls and their name isn't on the list or they're being challenged? Any advice on that front?
Yeah, I mean, look, people make such a big deal about Election Day voting fraud. And the truth is our elections are very secure. I mean, we've seen it in the last election. There are people there to walk you through at every single polling place that I'm aware of here where I grew up and where I work the polls. And these are good people that are there to help you through the process, that will talk you through the process. My only advice is don't walk away. Ask the questions. Make sure you talk to those poll monitors, talk to them the right way. And these are people that are out there to make sure our election's safe and secure.
Yeah, if nothing, get a provisional ballot and at least make sure that you get something in. Last question. Thoughts? What are we looking for on election night? Do we think it'll be called on election night, or do we see a protracted counting? And how do you think the House and the Senate are going to fare overall?
So, I mean, I'm not in the art of predicting, right? Because that never seems to work for me as a betting man. I always seem to regret it the next day. Here's what I think I know to be true, Rick. I don't think we're going to know the final outcome of this election for quite some time. I don't believe we're going to have anything other than insight Tuesday night and into early Wednesday morning. There's things like in the state of Pennsylvania, they can't even handle the mail-in ballots and start processing them until after 7:00, right? Tomorrow. So I think it's going to be a slow process. I do fear that Donald Trump is going to pull the same, stunt that he pulled in 2020 by trying to claim an early lead and an early victory. And I think that people need to be patient. I think we're going to see a very, very good day. And I think women are going to be the ones that put this thing over the top for Vice President Harris. I do believe that in my heart of hearts. I do believe the House is within grasp. And I think we're going to have some very close Senate races that have been written off. I do believe that Texas is going to be much tighter than some people may have thought. And I think that could be the surprise of the night. And I think there could be some other surprises within there. But really the answer is be patient. It could take us, I remember Saturday. It was Saturday after Election Day when they finally called the state of Pennsylvania for Joe Biden. And Joe Biden won by a pretty nice margin in the state of Pennsylvania. So just be patient. It's going to be a long couple days.
I'm hoping that everybody gets out. I'm hoping this is a well-decided election, clear, cut, and dry, so we don't have these kind of months of deniers or angry in courts and all this stuff. I hope we make an actual decision. But Jimmy, I appreciate you taking some time. Great work on this election thus far. I look forward to the results tomorrow. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me, too.
Jimmy Williams, Jr., General President of the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. I want to hear your thoughts. What do we expect on Election Day? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, as we've been talking about, the nation's eyes is going to be on Pennsylvania Tuesday, and, well, Philadelphia. That's where if you know Pennsylvania politics, as Philly goes in these elections, the state goes, you get a good turnout in Philly, you get a lot of people energized, engaged, and out to cast their ballots. You get a big turnout. Democrats do well in Pennsylvania. In fact, if you remember 2010, you had Tom Corbett said, if we could just hold down the vote in Philly, we'll do all right. And he knew what he was talking about. As long as they can suppress the vote there, maybe Republicans have a chance. And here to share some thoughts on what the atmosphere is in Philly. I know over the weekend had some big rallies, had some events going on, lots of door knocking, lots of get out the vote activity. That's why I've asked Richard Hooker to come talk with us. Richard is the Secretary-Treasurer of Teamsters Local 623 there in Philly. TeamstersLocal623.org, the website. Richard, How are you, buddy?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me on the show.
So, what's it look like?
I believe we're going to win. We're going to get her across the finish line. When I mean her, I mean Kamala Harris. I think we're going to get her to that point where she needs to be. And like you said earlier, it's going to come through Philly. And we're going to turn the numbers up here. We are. We've been knocking hundreds of thousands of doors here. Not just, Teamsters, but I mean, all kind of unions, United here, SCIU, AFL-CIO. We've been really, really putting the boots on the ground.
Now, I remember talking to a number of labor leaders at the international level back in 2016 who were in Philadelphia knocking on doors, talking to union members, and they came back with the kind of gut feeling. Are you feeling that this time around?
No, I feel like the folks that we've talked to, they realize that democracy is really at stake here. And you can like Trump, don't like Trump, whatever, but he is a threat to democracy. And America is a lot of things. We may be this, that, or the other, but the one thing I do realize is that America, we do love democracy, the freedom to love who we want, worship who we want, go where we want. And this guy is a threat to all of that. And so regardless of your party, I think people really understand it, especially after January the 6th. And I think people understand that. The folks that we talk to, they understand that, hey, man, I may not like a lot of the policies and stuff from Kamala, but when it comes to democracy, there's really only one candidate.
So let me ask you this then, because, as a Teamster, you know that the International Union, Sean O'Brien and the executive board failed to endorse in the presidential election. And their claim is because, Trump won so many union households in their poll. I guess the first part, they claimed that Biden won. When Biden dropped out, they then did, a phone poll or something? And they then said it was a landslide. Trump won by 60, 70%?
Yeah, it was, I believe throughout the QR code that you're speaking of in the phone poll, I believe he got about 67% of the vote. But what they didn't mention to tell folks was that only around 3% of the entire membership, and that's 1.3 members, voted in all three of their polls. So that's not really indicative of overwhelmingly everybody want Trump. Yeah. No, that's not the case. And here in Pennsylvania, especially in Philadelphia, in my membership, it was overwhelming support for Kamala Harris. So I mean, the polling is whatever. And I think we're going to see what happens on Tuesday, that those polls don't really, indicate where the Teamsters want to go and want to be, the rank and file, I should say. And to what he did, I think it was an injustice to the entire labor movement, because in something like this, every labor organization has to be together. You have to be.
Yeah, the idea of unity, the idea of solidarity, all of that stuff. And and I guess I'll bring this up since you've opened this door. I saw O'Brien on a right-wing podcast with a shirt that says Teamsters versus everybody, and I think that's a horrible frame. I think it's stupid. In fact, I've told him point blank, I think it's stupid. And I hope that isn't how he truly feels, because we need to be part of the greater labor movement.
I agree. And I don't agree with that either. I think the collective is the way to fight capitalism, right? You can't do it with just a group, group over here, group over there. We all have to be moving in the same direction.
And the reason I think this is important, Richard, is look, Pennsylvania is the keystone of this election.
Yeah.
There's no questioning that. There's no pundit who doesn't believe that. There's no commentator who doesn't understand that. Pennsylvania is the state. The Teamsters represent a lot of workers in this state. So to have the kind of mixed message that the International is sending to your members and to the members across the state, I think is dangerous. And I fear, and this is where my fear is on Tuesday, that kind of mixed message helps Donald Trump win this state and ultimately become president in 2025.
Well, you're right. The messaging has been very confusing. And we have spent a lot of time with our members having to explain to them, hey, listen, we know what the general president did. Stop focusing on that. We're here to talk about what your employer will do. And that's really what this is all about. What your employer will do to you if you don't have the right to strike, the right to have collective bargaining, the right to have due process in your contracts, agreements procedure. That's what this is about. O'Brien does O'Brien things, right? Whatever. We have to focus on the here and now. You see your manager every day. What you think your manager wants to do. And that's where we go when we talk to our members about what happened at the IBT and what needs to happen on November the 5th.
Yeah, ultimately, which side are you on in this moment? But you brought up the right to strike. I think that should be the giant red line that any politician who dare say that it's okay to fire striking workers should never get a union vote ever. And yet you had Donald Trump and Elon Musk waxing poetic about doing just that.
I know, and I'm with you. When I heard that, I thought, and this is just me, I thought that the general president was going to come out and say, hey, that's it. Enough is enough. Kamala Harris. I did. That didn't happen.
That would have been leadership.
Yes, because at that point, to your point, what is there left to talk about? If we can't strike our employer, you're not going to get what your demands met. It's not going to happen. That's our strongest and most valuable weapon to withhold our labor. When you can't do that, the employers are just going to walk over you.
It's really your only power, Richard. The only power workers truly have is the right to put their hands in their pockets and walk. That's it. You have no other power in the workplace. And in fact, Pennsylvania's workers' compensation law still refers to the employer-employee relationship as master and servant. So that's the situation. If you don't have that ability to strike in this country, then you have, as you pointed out, nothing. And to have a presidential candidate praise someone for doing that should be one of those, look, Donald Trump, so much of what he does should have been the end of him. But for me, that really is the mortal sin.
I agree. To me, in labor, nothing is more sacred than the picket line. Nothing. And so when you desecrate that by saying all those folks who made that determination that they had enough and we're going to do what we need to do to get our demands met, and you think it's funny, because that decision, it doesn't come lightly. All right. There's some conversations that you got to have with your family. Hey, money's going to be tight, may not be working, but you have decided to tell your employer enough is enough. Yeah. And like you said, when a presidential candidate says that sacrifice should be punished, they should be disqualified from any union endorsement.
See, for me, that's I just carry that around on a tape recorder going, you're in a union? Did you hear this? That should be it. That should be the end of it. And I think back to my grandfather, who was a lifelong union member, fought, battles back in the 50s and, fighting for union rights in the 60s. And, this stuff would have been the end of someone. And I remember when I moved in with my grandparents, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when my mother passed, I moved in with my grandparents, and my grandfather said, you don't go across the street and you don't play with that guy's grandkids or you don't go anywhere near that house. And I didn't ask why for about 10 years. And I said, what was that all about? Evidently, the guy crossed a railroad picket like 40 years beforehand. And nobody talked to him. He was completely ostracized from virtually everyone because of that transgression. Because that's how that generation built the most prosperous working class in the history of humanity, by having that kind of solidarity and that kind of response to people breaking that.
And we need to bring that back, brother. We need to bring that back. We can't endorse candidates or withhold our endorsement of pro-labor candidates when we know we have someone who believes in crossing picket lines and believes that you should be fired for going on strike. We can't have that.
Now, I got to get your thoughts on this. I was watching one of your Facebook posts, and I don't speak Spanish, but you had one of your members talking about the Puerto Rico joke or comment, and I look at this most recent Univision YouGov poll that shows that 69% of the people who responded, thought the comments defining Puerto Rico as a floating island of garbage were more racist than humorous. 17% thought the comments were intended as a joke rather than serious remarks. 71% felt that, well, it is who Trump is. It's the racism in their campaign. And now you've got 64% of Latino voters leaning towards Harris. Are we surprised it's only 64%? And what kind of message did that comment give you as you're out there talking to people? Because Pennsylvania has a very large Puerto Rican population, which hopefully could swing the election. Any thoughts?
Well, Trump has always been a racist person. Just put that out there. So when a person comes to one of his rallies and say that, that's because he creates that atmosphere for them to feel comfortable in doing that. And when I walked into work that day, my shop steward came to me and she was upset and she wanted to do that video and let her, her fellow Puerto Rican and Latino people know they need to vote for Kamala Harris, which she did. And even though I understand the people say, "Oh, this is Trump," but that doesn't give him a pass. He's wrong. He's racist. And again, when you don't endorse the other candidate, it says a lot about you. Yeah, no, I mean, very clearly.
And as I've said, look, if Trump does win, I will begin every broadcast in with, this is what Donald Trump did today, the horrible that he has done. And thank you, Sean O'Brien, for making that possible. Because, look, I truly believe if Pennsylvania goes to Trump, it will be because of O'Brien.
I hope not, because I just hope not, because I really don't know what the thinking was behind the non-endorsement or the tacit endorsement, I should say, for Donald Trump. I don't get it. I don't understand, because he has never demonstrated that he was on the side of working people. Never. And so why would the most powerful union in the land not endorse Kamala Harris, who gave the deciding vote to save pensions, in which the general president's pension got a lot of money from that pension plan being saved? I just don't understand it.
I don't either. And look, all the other stuff that goes. Now, Richard, on Sunday, the Teamsters held a rally for Amazon workers with Bob Casey. There was a Casey rally, and the hope is that Bob Casey gets reelected. I think Bob Casey's a good man. But you had this big rally for Amazon, which is great. I love the fact that they're organizing Amazon. Sean O'Brien calls me tomorrow and says, "Hey, I need your help." I'm going to help him. But if Donald Trump becomes president, all that ends, because the joint employer rule goes away, the CMEX decision goes away. We end up seeing the return to corporate rule at the National Labor Relations Board, which is all bad for the organizing victories that we've come to be very proud of here recently. I think it all dies.
I agree. And that's why, again, I don't understand why we don't support a candidate who has shown us that they want to strengthen the PRO Act, pass the PRO Act, I should say, and make it easier for workers to organize and not appoint pro-corporate people to the NLRB. I don't understand, because to your point, what happens if Trump wins? All that Amazon organizing and stuff, that goes out the window. It's over with. No. So why not support Kamala, who has told everybody that, hey, we're going to pass the PRO Act and make it easier for workers to join a union? I just don't get it.
The only way the PRO Act passes is if we get 60 senators, and I don't see that happening for a while. So for me, it's about using the levers of power that you have right now. And the National Labor Relations Board, the Department of Labor, the Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Justice. There's a lot of levers that we can use today to make lives better. And I say I want someone who's going to put those levers in the right place. And Donald Trump has shown us he is not that guy.
He's not, and he's never going to be. And hopefully, come Wednesday morning, we'll wake up and democracy is saved. We'll still have the right to strike. Women still have freedom. We'll still have the right to collectively bargain. And those levers that you're talking about will still be able to be used for workers. So again, I don't know why we didn't endorse Kamala. I'll just say that.
I'm with you. I got to get your thoughts on this. I don't know if you've seen this story or not, but evidently, have you seen that Donald Trump's Truth Social company outsourced jobs to Mexico?
No, I didn't see it. Wow.
Now, remember, this is a guy who's on the campaign trail railing against people outsourcing jobs, and he's threatening heavy tariffs, and he's making all of this political noise. I don't believe for a second he's going to put tariffs on everything. I think it would be stupid to do on everything. I believe in tariffs if we use them strategically, but broad stroke anything I'm opposed to. But this idea that we're going to tariff everything, and yet he's doing what he claims he wants to stop. I just think this is one of those, this is who he is. Why don't we believe him?
Brother, if I had the answer to that, I'll be a billionaire. But maybe
you'd get a tax break.
Right. But he has continued to show us who he is. He's not going to change. Nobody's really forcing him to change. And that's the problem. He continues to be this way because for whatever reason, people support him. And until that changes, until people wake up, we're always going to have this Donald Trump syndrome, I should say. Because once hopefully he goes away, there's going to be somebody else that comes up behind him.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is the thing that's really troubling to me. And I said it earlier. My grandfather had a saying: if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it, because they understand return on investment. So when I see people like Elon Musk running around spending millions and millions of dollars, when I see all these billionaires spending millions of dollars to get Trump elected and doing it in a most out fashion, it's kind of not one of those which side are you on things, something that my grandfather would have viscerally been repelled from, and regardless if he agreed with him or not, would have voted against him just because of the moneyed interests putting so much into this guy, because they're getting something out of it.
Absolutely. So
I'm curious your thought. I mean, is this something that, or is this too far of an explanation, too far of a point to make? Because I think I think it's a visceral thing where you've got billionaires who are doing so well in this economy, when you've got working people who are struggling, and you've got people fighting, not wanting to pay taxes, or it's crazy to me.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe they are going to get something out of this. That's why they're spending so much money, because they believe that once he gets in, of course, the corporate tax cuts and all these many things are going to keep coming their way. Wow, they're going to continue to put the squeeze on the working class. That's what's going to happen. And again, we have to wake up and make sure we get to the polls tomorrow and show up. We have to. If not, then corporate greed will reign supreme, and the working class is going to be, under their domain, and we have to fight back.
Richard Hooker, I appreciate the time. Always great talking to you, my friend.
Same here. Thank you.
Our good friend Richard Hooker, Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 623. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Too far on the O'Brien thing? I've been getting beat up from some of my Teamster friends that I talk too much about it. I got to tell you, I think it is that big of a deal. I think his miscalculation, his failure is a big deal. Keep the emails coming. rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1916. That was the day when what came to be known as the Everett Massacre took place in Washington State. The Everett Shingle Workers Union had gone out on strike in May. Organizers from the industrial workers of the world came to the area to support the strike and to make a stand for free speech. Over the summer, tensions began to mount. the police began to arrest IWW speechmakers. Then, in August, violence erupted between strikebreakers and picketers at the Jameson Mill. The IWW decided to bring in a group of about 300 members for a free speech rally. They came from Seattle by 2 steamer boats. But the first boat was met at the docks by the sheriff and a large group of armed deputies. A gun battle broke out. One passenger, Ernest Nordstrom, told the harrowing tale of what happened to the Seattle Union Record, saying, quote, "I couldn't swear where the first shot came from, but as it comes to me, I thought the first shot was a warning shot not to go ashore. After that, there were shots, gee whiz, all kinds of shots. And when they commenced, all ran to the other side and the boat began to tip. The passengers avoided capsizing the boat and turned around to flee back to Seattle. At least 5 IWW members on board were killed, along with 2 of the deputies. After the violence, the Shingle Workers Union called off their strike. 74 IWW members were arrested, but only 1 stood trial. None were convicted. Ernest Nordstrom followed up with, "I'm sure there is no excuse for this whatsoever. There need have been no bloodshed." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So this is the closing argument, if you will, for tomorrow's election. I hope everyone's registered. I hope everyone gets out to vote. Look, ultimately, what I want to see the country make a decision. I want us to decide which path we're going to follow. And they're very clear. To me, in this moment, it's very clear the directions each campaign wants to take. I have chosen the one that I would like us to see go down. It's the one that built this country into the powerhouse that it was. Reshoring manufacturing, good union jobs, sane taxation, a government that works to make lives better as opposed to enriching billionaires. It seems very clear to me. On the other side, you've got, and we've heard Elon Musk, we've heard Donald Trump in his talk about how he likes the 1880s and 90s and the Gilded Age, and we've heard him say he's going to give tax cuts to billionaires. We've heard all of this stuff. And if we ignore it, it's at our own peril. The thing that you can say Republicans have been, if anything, is honest in the fact that they hate this country as it is. They want to remake it into some right-wing fantasy, some bizarre utopia of some right-wing novelist, and a place that hasn't been in our lifetime. They hate what this country has become, one that is more egalitarian, one that is, well, more diverse. And the question is, what do we decide? Which direction do we go? And that's why I hope tomorrow when people go to the polls, I'm hoping there's a decision and a clear decision. My fear is that, again, we have another one of these moments where we're bickering over a handful of votes in a handful of states, and the whiner class does nothing but complain. Because understand, there's a potential of nobody being happy with the result, or half the country hating the other half, or continuing this. Look, if Donald Trump wins in a landslide, I accept that he won. I will fight the policies. We will work to ensure that politicians know our and will feel our wrath if Project 2025 becomes the law of the land. And we have no reason to believe that they will not pursue what's in that document. They've been very clear that this is what they want. This is their wet dream list. This is what they are going to do. And I'm hoping that the education process has happened. I'm hoping there have been, because look, there's been enough emails and phone calls and texts and knocking on the doors and all of that. Everybody's doing it. It now comes down to us. It comes down to us deciding, what kind of a country do we want to have? Or is it just about anger? Sadly, I hear too many people, I'm just angry about how things are. And their vote becoming a protest vote more than a direction vote. I hope by going to the polls, we say what kind of a country we want, what kind of an economy we want, what kind of a future we want to leave to our children. Voting is an awesome responsibility. It's an incredible responsibility. Being a citizen, a critically thinking citizen in a country thinking about not just themselves and their narrow self-interest, but the future that they're going to leave their children. That's what this is about. Now, me as a union guy, I find Donald Trump's comment to Elon Musk, I find that reprehensible. I find it completely out of bounds and a total disqualifier. And anyone who's ever carried a union card, that should be an absolute disqualifier. As the father of 2 daughters, the fact that Roe versus Wade is now not the law of the land and my daughters have less rights than their mother or their grandmother, that's also a disqualifier. My thoughts. I want to hear yours, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. You going to vote? I sure hope so. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast. And as always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.